Okay, so here we are with another installment of Economics with Tully, and this is part of our financial literacy series. And so I'm coming to you from my kitchen table because that's where a lot of people sit and do their income taxes or their bill paying. So I figured it was an appropriate place to actually have this discussion. I'm making the assumption that you've seen my previous videos, which deal with the credit reporting agencies and your credit score. And so this particular video is kind of a collection of guidelines or tips scoured from various financial sources on establishing credit, using it wisely, paying it down, and then household budgeting. And I realize my students come from very different places. Some have never had a credit card before, and the idea of establishing credit is a brand new one. Some have had credit, used it wisely. Some of you have had credit and screwed up, as many of us do. And some are simply looking for a way to balance our household budget in a way that's less stressful and more proactive. And so the 16 tips that I have for you today are, run the gamut from establishing to credit to that household budget situation. So, starting with actually getting credit for the first time. All right. Tip number 1: read the fine print. Very, very often, people with no credit or little credit or poor credit will receive something in the mail, an offer in the mail from a credit card company, and it will say something such as, "You've been pre-approved for up to $1,000 worth of credit. Just respond to this or call us today, do something very quick, and respond to us." And very often these companies will provide you credit, but simply because they say up to $1,000 doesn't mean you're getting $1,000 worth of credit. I get these offers about every 2 or 3 months in the mail. When you read the fine print, the fees you're getting socked with are obscene. Usually, you will not get $1,000 worth of credit, or even $500. You'll get something like $300 worth of credit, because they know that they've chosen you because you seem like a person who could use additional income or additional credit, and you're most likely to respond to the opportunity to get it. When you read the fine print, you'll find that there's a setup fee of $79, and then there's an annual membership fee of $35, and then there's a monthly account maintenance fee of $6, which they take out at once. What you find out if you read through the fine print is that this offer, which is going to offer you probably $300 worth of credit, is going to cost you about $240 worth of credit by the time you're done. $240 period that you give to them simply to have this card. There's no reason to do that. That's not a good choice. That's making decisions quickly and emotionally, because you think, well, I got my first credit card, I got an opportunity to get this, and not rationally. Do not take those offers. They're not for you. Always read the fine print on a credit card offer. What is the annual fee? And many credit cards don't have annual fees at all. What are they going to charge you just to have a card? What are they going to charge you on a monthly basis? Are they charging you a setup fee? Don't take it. Simply don't take it. Tip number 2 is the alternative to that. All right, here's what you should do. And that is, if you're just starting out, you're in this conundrum. I want credit, but they won't give me credit if I don't have credit, but I can't get credit if I don't have credit. How do I do this? One of the easiest ways to begin building your credit history, to establish credit, or to reestablish credit if you've lost it, is through a secured card arrangement. And there are a number of legitimate credit card companies out there. US Bank, First Progress Bank, sometimes Capital One, that offer these secured credit arrangements. And what that means is you send them cash in the amount of the credit that you're looking for. So let's say it's $300. That's a very common start-up secured credit card amount. You send them $300. They deposit that in an account. So while you don't have access to that $300, you're also not losing it. All right, it's your money in an account that you're in a savings account that you're unable to withdraw from. That secures the credit card they issue you. So you'll have $300 worth of credit. They also report to all three major credit reporting agencies every month. So if you have poor credit, no credit, you've screwed up your credit, this is one of the best ways to actually get a credit card in your name that begins reporting and reporting positively to those credit agencies. These are legitimate ways and legitimate cards of establishing credit. Third, another way to begin establishing credit or reestablishing, especially after after you've messed up, is to go to a local bank, and usually a small local bank or a credit union with whom you have a relationship is going to be more likely to do this, and that is to set up a personal loan for you, but structure it this way. And you may have to sit down with a bank officer and actually negotiate this out, but this is often a way to do it. You ask for a $1,000 loan. The bank then puts that loan in a savings account in your name, but puts a block on it so that you cannot access the money you just borrowed. Instead, they set up an automatic withdrawal situation to pay back that loan amount over the course of a year or 2 years, and they report that as a personal loan to the credit agencies that's being paid off on time. So, from the bank's perspective, it's very low risk because they're blocking you from taking the money out of the account, and there's an automatic payment that they know they're getting. From your perspective, it's painless. You're taking the loan, you're not using the money, you're not worrying about the payback, it happens automatically every month, so it's not even something you can possibly forget. The cost to you, over a year or two, maybe $15 in interest that you give them extra or give them up front. No big deal. In fact, it's a pretty low-cost way of reestablishing credit. And again, this works best when you're working with a small local bank or local credit union with whom you already have an ongoing relationship. So, there's tips 1, 2, and 3. Read the fine print, especially on those startup fees. Get yourself a secured card. And if possible, get yourself a secured loan that you don't have to worry about. It just helps in the process. The fourth tip for those seeking credit or looking for additional credit sources, do not, under any circumstance, I don't care how desperate you are, do not ever get yourself what is called a payday loan. Payday loans are rife across the internet. They're sometimes operated outside of the country. They're sometimes operated by Indian tribes that say they're not subject to federal law, which is nonsense. They are illegal in many, many places where they operate, including Massachusetts, where I currently teach. That doesn't stop them. A payday loan basically says, hey, we're no credit check. We don't check your credit. It's okay if you got poor credit. As long as you've got a job and a bank account, we'll give you a loan. And then we'll simply take that payment out of your bank account on your actual payday. So what they do is they get your bank account information, they get information about where you work and how much you get paid, and they give you a loan. And this often happens when people have rent due today, but they don't get paid for a week, and they panic. So they get this payday loan. What they don't realize, number one, is that the interest rate on this loan is they're often in the hundreds of percentage, if not thousands of percentage, number one. Number two, some of these operations, you think you're getting a loan and then you pay it back with the next payday. That's actually not what happens. What happens is, and again it goes back to reading the fine print on what you're being sent, is they take the interest for that period and then refinance the loan, so that every single payday they continue to take out interest on a loan that never ever gets paid back. And the only way out of that is to close that bank account, which is going to could make some trouble between you and your bank, because there's still all these withdrawals that are supposedly taking place and you no longer have a bank account, and it gets very ugly. And the payday company gets ugly, and they call and they write, and they will call you at work, and they will use language that is intimidating. They will say things such as, "We have a case on file attached to your social," which makes it sound like there's a law case, a legal case somewhere, and they have your social security number, and it's designed to intimidate people into paying money. Do not use them. B, do not be intimidated by them, because the reality is those operations are illegal in most states. As I said, it's illegal in Massachusetts because the interest rate exceeds what is permitted by the state. And most of these places are not licensed by the state. If you've gotten yourself involved in one of these situations, if you can put up with the harassment and not let it bother you and just hang up on them or laugh in their face, and not freak out when they say, "We're going to be delivering papers to your door and we're about to take this to the next level," and get nasty with you. If you can put up with that, you often can actually get away with not paying the loan back. And I'm not suggesting that you should get a payday loan and then not pay it back. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is if you have been caught up in this nonsense, they legally usually cannot come after you, but they will intimidate you and try. The best bet is to go nowhere near them from the start. Just don't deal with them. So, again, in terms of establishing credit, go for that secured credit card. It's the easiest way to start. And a lot of those secured credit card companies, several of the ones I mentioned, have a zero annual fee, a zero startup fee. They are legit. Or get a secured loan from your bank or credit union simply to establish credit. Obviously, you wouldn't have access to those funds as you would with a secured credit card. Don't go near payday loans. Don't accept mail offers that in the fine print charge you crazy amounts of fees. Okay? All right. Now, you've got your credit. What's the best way to handle this stuff? As I've said in previous videos, late payments are the biggest foul when it comes to credit cards. A single late payment on a single card by a single day may drop your credit score anywhere from 40 to 70 points, and that will remain with you for a good 2.5 to 3 years, affecting you. The last thing you want to do is let it slip your mind, forget to make your credit card payment. If you're going to have this credit card, you've got to be responsible in paying it on time. And if you don't, the fees add up. Take, for instance, Chase Bank has a Sapphire card. It's one of their credit cards. The current annual percentage rate, as of the time of this video, is 13%. You make a single late payment, the interest on your credit card jumps to 29.99%, 30%, more than doubles. Plus, you get a late fee of $35. If you miss another payment date, the fee can soar to 3% of your entire outstanding balance. Don't be late with that credit card. It's critical. And I will give you some hints later as to some ways to make sure that that never happens. Another thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to your credit score, late credit card payments, a single one, will ding it. Utility payments, a late utility payment, generally does not. In fact, your electric bill and your telephone bill and your internet bill and your water bill, a lot of these bills you pay every month that you fret over just as much as maybe your credit card bill, don't report to the credit agencies at all. So even if you're late, it has no impact whatsoever on your credit. So am I saying, don't pay your electric bill, let it slide? No. But what I am saying is if you do find yourself in a crunch and you're only able to make one payment on time, it should be that credit card payment because that's the one that's going to hit you with the big fees, and that's the one that's going to ding your credit score. The others don't even count on your credit score. Okay, number 6. It's all a matter of perspective. A credit card is not income. When you get your plastic in the mail, if you start thinking to yourself, wow, now I have an extra $1,000 in buying power, you're already thinking about it incorrectly. It is not an increase in your income. It's not extra money. Instead, think of that card as simply another way to use your current cash reserves. In other words, you use the card, you pay it. The best way to use a credit card is not to buy things that you can't afford, but to use it to buy things that you can afford to pay with in cash right now. So if I'm going out to dinner tonight and I've got $75 in cash set aside to actually do that, one effective, efficient, and appropriate way to use my credit is instead of paying $75 in cash to that restaurant tonight, pay them with the credit card. Then go online in a few days, see that it's actually hit the credit card, and pay it. In other words, I'm not using the credit to buy things I can't afford. Instead, I'm simply using it as a transaction mechanism. That's all it is. I actually have the cash for this good, but I'm using the credit card and then I'm paying it. It's not extra income. And that leads me to point 7. You don't have to wait until the bill comes in the mail to pay it. And this is what many people do. And there's a lot of, it's easy to screw it up when that's what you do. First, you forget about it because you're waiting for them to tell you money is due. Second, it may arrive at a time that doesn't work well in terms of your cash flow. And third, you may get it and then put it aside, forget about it. By the time you put your payment in the mail, it doesn't get there on time. Late fee, credit ding. We live in an age where everything is done on the internet. Go on the internet. Register, if you have a credit card, set up your account so that you can see what's going on your credit card any given day. And then, when you've charged things to your credit card, go online and pay it. Pay it right then and there. Don't wait for the bill to come. Don't wait for the due date. If you do that, you will never be late. Things will never cross in the mail. And what's more important is that psychologically, you are in control of what's going in and out of that account. You're not waiting for them to tell you what to do. You are managing your credit. Go online, establish that account, make it happen. Okay, tip number 8. It actually makes sense to spread your debt over several credit cards rather than using one. And here's why. One of the biggest factors, in fact 35% of your total credit score, is based on something called credit utilization. And what that means is how much of your available credit are you actually using. Now let's say you have a credit card with $1,000 worth of available credit, and you put $500 worth of charges on that. That is a 50% credit utilization. You've used 50% or half of the credit that's available to you. That's actually bad. In terms of calculating credit scores, the credit agencies want to see that you've used 30% or less of your available credit in actual charges. If you use more than that, it's actually rated lower. It could actually drag your score down. So if you have 2 credit cards with $1,000 worth of available credit each, and you charge that same $500 amount of goods on those credit cards, you're now only using 25% of your available credit. And that's the best possible situation. Okay, 0 to 20 or 0 to 30% in that range is the best possible arrangement as far as the credit companies are concerned. If you don't use one of those cards, after a long time, the credit company may simply close it out, which actually hurts you, because now, instead of having $500 on 2 cards total, you've got $500 on 1 card, and it ups your credit utilization percentage. So, having 2 or 3 cards, spreading what you have out across several of them so they all remain active, but keeping the total utilization under 30,000 is the best of all worlds. Now, if having 3 credit cards means that your personality is such that you'll max all 3 out, obviously that's a danger. But if you can discipline yourself to keep the use under 30%, you've got the best of all worlds there. Tip number 9. Unless it's an absolute dire emergency and there's no other choice, under no circumstance ever use a credit card for a cash advance. And again, this goes back to the fact that this is not income. This is not extra money. This is not free cash. This is not free parking in Monopoly, okay? Give you an example. If you take out $1,000 on a Citibank Platinum card, you'll get hit with a $50 fee just for taking the cash advance. The percentage, the interest percentage, jumps from 20% to 25%, 20% being their highest for regular purchases, jumps to 25%. And rather than being applied 30 days down the road after your next due date, it's applied immediately. And that means that even if you pay that cash advance back within the same month you took it out, you're going to pay $21 in interest plus the $50 fee they charged you. It's not worth it. So unless it's a dire emergency and there's no other choice, don't use a credit card for free cash. Now, if you've gotten into the situation where you've got a couple of credit cards, you've got 3 or 4 credit cards, and you've used them more than you should, and you haven't, I mean, it's really, you really want to think of this as not extra money, but you use it and you pay it down to 0 or pay it down to $1 or something like that, and you've gotten to the point where now you have balances that you're carrying from month to month on your credit card, which is how most people use their credit cards, and it's the worst way to use them. You don't want to be carrying balances from month to month, but let's say you do. What you want to do, the number one thing you want to do in terms of getting your financial house in order is to get those cards paid down. And there's 2 very effective ways, both developed by Dave Ramsey, who is a kind of a financial literacy guru, as to how to approach getting those cards paid down. One is called the debt snowball, and one is called the debt avalanche. So, here they are, and you use the one that works best for you. In the debt snowball, you make a list of your credit cards in the order of the amount that is due on each one. Okay, let's say from the smallest one to the highest one. And what you decide to do is attack that smallest one first. So you pay the minimum balance due, or at least the minimum balance due, on the larger ones so that you're always making your payments on time and at least doing that. And then you take that small one, and maybe there's only $21 a month or $20 a month due on that one. And you take as much extra cash as you can every month and you apply it to that one. So that instead of paying $20 a month, you're paying $70 a month on that small credit card. Now, the first good thing about that is that you'll get one paid off. And psychologically, statistics show that when you see progress in your finances, that actually spurs you on to continue to work on your finances to get your house in order. So psychologically, this is the way to go for most people. Now, this is a second step here. In doing the debt snowball, now you've gotten rid of your small debt, your smallest credit card. You move on to the next one. What you don't do, okay, don't say to yourself, wow, I've gotten rid of the small credit card, so now I got $70 extra in cash a month. I think I'll go buy a pair of shoes. Do not do that. Instead, take the amount that you were using on that small credit card and add it to the amount you're paying on the next credit card. So your income, or psychologically your income does not change. You're simply applying this payment to the next one. So that on the second credit card, instead of paying the minimum of $50 a month, you pay the minimum of $50 plus the $70 you had been paying on the card that you paid off, so you're paying $120 a month off. And then when you get rid of that card, you take that whole payment, you add it to the payment on the large card, and you start working on that. Again, psychologically, this has statistically shown that it works best for most people because of the progress that you see. It's not the best mathematically, though. The best mathematically is not the debt snowball, but the debt avalanche, as Dave Ramsey calls it. In the debt avalanche, you do the same thing. It's the same approach, except instead of tackling the smallest credit card first, you tackle the credit card that has the highest interest rate first. So you put your cards in order of what interest rate am I paying. You take the one that's got the highest interest rate, which could be 18.9% or 23% or something like that. You get rid of that one first. It may take you a little longer because it may be a larger balance, but that's okay because you're actually saving the most mathematically by getting rid of the debt that's got the highest interest rate first. If you don't need to see quick results, like getting rid of the smallest card first, this is the way that actually makes the most mathematical sense. So either way, the snowball or the avalanche, attack that debt. Makes more sense to get rid of your, actually it makes more sense to get rid of your debt first than it does to actually save money in an interest-bearing account. Because if you've got $100 extra every month and you put it in a savings account and you earn 1%, when you could have paid off a debt that's charging you 25%, obviously you can see the difference right there. Okay, finally, people often ask about the issue of bankruptcy. And that's a whole topic in and of itself. There are federal laws concerning bankruptcy, and every state has their own laws concerning bankruptcy. Keep in mind that if your debt is largely taxes or school loans, you cannot release those debts in bankruptcy. If you have enormous credit card debts or medical bills, those debts can be released in bankruptcy. It is not a process that is as easy as it used to be. You will have to go through a credit counseling, usually online, course. The court may or may not grant it. It will ding your credit for a good 10 years, during which time it will be almost impossible to get a loan or credit for anything. It could actually hurt you in terms of getting a job. But it's a possible solution for some people to start all over. And if that's the case, I recommend that you see a bankruptcy attorney, not a general attorney, not an attorney who's a family friend. Go to a bankruptcy attorney who knows this, because as I said, some states let you keep your house and your car. Others say, no, you got to give everything up. See an attorney to see if that's an option for you. It should be the last option. And if you're panicking over small debts, $5,000, $10,000, $12,000, don't even think of bankruptcy. There's no reason to mess up your credit and your future for 10 years or more down the road for a debt that's actually that small. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, it's enormous, I can't do this. It's actually small. So that's all I'm going to talk about bankruptcy. That's a whole other topic and very personal, obviously, to you and your legal and financial situation. See an attorney. Now, in terms of budgeting, now we're going to move into the budgeting tips here. I believe very strongly in something that I call real budgeting. And what that means, that means a few things, first of all. Number one, if you're sitting there and you're saying, well, I generally know I pay this amount in electric and this amount in food and this amount in taxes, blah, 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 blah. That's not real budgeting. And if you're trying to build a budget around that, it's generally not going to work. Because there are areas that you spend more on or less on of which you really are not aware. I strongly recommend everyone take a month, write down every single expense you have. Even if you spend 50 cents in the candy store and a pack of gum, you write it down. If you're going to make a household or a family budget, you've got to do it on what really happens, not on what you think happens. And this is a principle throughout economics. I often ask my students how they feel what's happening to prices in the supermarket. And they have a general sense that all prices are going up and they're paying more and more for their food every month. But when you ask how much are they going up, they're usually way off compared to the actual amounts that prices are changing, if they're changing at all. So you want to base your budget on real numbers, not what you think they are. Take a month, write it all down. Once you've got what you've spent, your money on, then you can begin to categorize them into categories that make sense. So, for instance, if you're looking at a budget, your budget may include categories such as your general food budget, which you may think of as the supermarket trip twice a month or 4 times a month, whatever it is. General household expenses that you don't normally budget for. These are the things you run out to the store to get because you need batteries, you need stamps, something like that. There's an amount in there, the miscellaneous household expenses, over and above your food budget. Car loan, mortgage or rent, school loan, credit card payments, oil, electric, water, landline phone, cell phone, whatever clubs you belong to, gym memberships, Netflix or something like that, your entertainment, your eating outside the house, your savings. There's a lot of categories that you can use. Put them in order. Now here's where real budgeting comes into play. Put them in order of the due date, the normal date that they are due. Your electric bill is normally due on a particular day of the month or close to it. So it's the same thing for your auto loan, same thing for your school loan, same thing for your rent or mortgage. Put them in order in the month, the 1st to the 30th or the 31st of the month. For things like your food, well, if you shop twice a month, do big supermarket trips, so you put in one at the beginning of the month and one at the end of the month, in general. If you do it 4 times, you do it once a week, then the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, the 28th, something like that. Now, take a look at when your income comes in. Do you get paid once a month, twice a month, every other week, 4 times a month? And what I usually do is I get paid twice a month, so I characterize that as paycheck A and paycheck B. I then say to myself, paycheck A, which is coming in the first half of the month, we will use that income, whatever it is, to pay the bills that are due in the second half of the month. And the paycheck that I get in the second half of the month, we use to pay the bills that are due in the first half of the next month. This way, you're not constantly cutting things right down to the wire, but you're a good 2 weeks, at least, ahead of the bills that come in. You can also, when you do that, add up and say, well, look at this. My bills for the first half of the month come to $1,200, and my bills for the second half of the month come to $2,000. Maybe I can move some of those bills that are in the second half of the month to the first half of the month. I might have to work with the company on that, or I may just choose to pay it early. Or I may, instead of waiting till the second half of the month to get my rent money, I'll save half of it in the first half of the month and half of it in the second half of the month. Even it out and match it up so that the paychecks, each of the paychecks that's coming in, covers a certain amount of bills that are due 2 weeks down the road. That's real budgeting. Real money coming in applied to very specific bills, the amount of which you've really determined down the road. Now, in doing that, there's my tip number 13. You always need to budget for expenses that you didn't incur this month, but which you know you will incur during the year. So, the two most common are auto repairs and your oil bill. Very often, people maybe get their last oil delivery in February or March, and they say, whew, okay, we're going to make it through to the summer. We're not going to need to pay a heating bill throughout the summer, and they forget about it. And they forget about it until September or October or November when they need to fill their tank up, and then they got a $600 bill sitting in front of them, and they're playing catch-up thinking, where am I going to get the money for this? Maybe my next paycheck, maybe I'll put it on the credit card and then pay it off. If you look at your annual oil bill, your annual heating bill, and instead of saying, well, I only buy that in the winter, break it up into 12 months, then you can budget for that every single month. So for instance, if your home heating oil bill comes to about $1,200 a year, then what you should be doing is every single month you put $100 aside into a savings account that you don't touch because you've escrowed that for your heating oil. So yeah, you're not ordering heating oil in the summer, but you're still putting away $100 in June and July and August and September and October, and when the bill comes, guess what? The money's already there. You're not wondering how are you going to pay for it. You're not putting it on a credit card and then getting interest charged to it because you weren't able to pay the whole thing off at once. Same thing with auto repairs. Maybe you haven't had auto repairs this month. Maybe you won't have them next month. You're going to have them at some point. You're going to have an oil change. You're going to have to change your windshield wiper blades. You're going to have something, some funny noise that you're going to need to check out at some point. Plan on it before it happens. The bottom line is, and this is not going to make you happy, you actually have less available cash to you than you think, because you will have expenses down the road that are going to be big, and you need to be putting something away now for when those bills hit later. It's a basic budgeting technique, and if you don't do it, then your budget's not going to work because it's going to get blown when those big expenses happen. Number 14. And this is going to be very much a function of your personal personality and style. And that is the question of whether to have payments made automatically drawn from your bank account or whether to actually make them yourself. And there's pros and cons to both. You should consider the pros and cons and then make a definite decision. On the one hand, there are many of your bills, utilities and credit cards that offer to take the money directly from your bank account on a certain day of the month. The pro to that is many people like not having to worry about it, knowing that that bill is going to be paid. It's going to be paid on time. If they're credit cards, you know you're not going to be late. You're not going to get hit with a late fee or get a credit ding, and it works well. That's the pro. The con to that are twofold. The downside to that, number one, is you may actually forget how much money is coming out of your account. Out of sight, out of mind, which could lead to you overdrawing your account accidentally because I forgot that payment was coming out, which will lead to bank fees. And the other downside is, again, the out of sight, out of mind approach to things is you're not proactively handling your money. You're not seeing that bill. You're not paying that bill. It just kind of happens. And it's easy to let things get out of hand. It's easy to allow bills that are really higher than they ought to be go unanswered and unaddressed because you're not proactively dealing with it. I personally, and this is just me, it's not you, I like to proactively pay my bills. I go online, I pay them. I don't like those automatic deductions from my account because I tend to forget the amount of them and when they're coming out, and because they come out in different days, with the exception of my auto insurance, which is fairly low and I don't worry too much about that. But you may find that the automatic deductions work well. The point here is that you've got options: automatic deductions or proactive, go online at least once a week, pay your bills, proactively do it. Make a decision and stick, that works for you, and stick with it. 15, and this is probably my most important tip of the 16 that I'm giving you, and that is be proactive. You are in control of your money. How often have maybe a bill collector has called and you haven't been ready to pay the bill, and they pressure you into, they'll say something to you such as, well, we can set up an automatic payment and post-date it. It won't happen until a week from now. It'll happen, 10 days from now. And they're pushy about it because that's what they get paid to do. Don't do it. Psychologically, what they're doing is they're putting you in the position of feeling like you are bad. You have done the wrong thing, you owe, and they're here to help you, and this is the way to do it. Turn the tables. They're looking for money from you. You are in control of your bank account and your finances. You tell them what you'll pay and when you'll pay and how you'll pay, and then you do that. It's a change in psychological approach. Now, I'll give you a true story that just happened this year in the apartment house that I live in. I live in an apartment with there's 4 or 5 different apartments here, units in this apartment building, and each one of us used the same oil company. And what we didn't know, and we found out, is that the less oil you use, the higher a rate they charge. And each one of us was trying to be frugal and using a little bit of oil each winter, so we were paying the highest rate. So we went to the oil company and we said, no, you're coming to this one house and you're filling up tanks for a whole group of people. We want you to aggregate, to add together all of the gallons of oil that all of us use, and then give us that cheaper rate. Now that may sound like an impossible, quest. We are now paying $1 less per gallon of oil than we did last year because the company agreed to that. There's nothing wrong with being proactive. It's your money, it's your life. If people think they can take something from you, they will. You need to be in control, and you need to make those decisions and be the one in charge of your own finances. We are each saving probably $600 a year because we simply were proactive about how we approached our finances. Lastly, number 16, and this is something I probably don't need to tell many of you, but I'm going to anyway. Be frugal. You know what? Tinfoil can be used more than once. Ziploc bags can be washed and used multiple times. Instead of throwing the ends of the carrots and the ends of the lettuce and the ends of the broccoli in the garbage or in the compost, put them in a Ziploc bag in the freezer and make soup stock out of it. That coffee that you stop and buy for $2 every day on the day to work, you've just spent $10 in a week on coffee. That $10 could have bought you an entire can of coffee that would last you an entire month. There's a lot of ways that you are nickel and dimed to death. You don't have to be. Make that meal at home instead of buying it out. Meals on the run, if you do what I said earlier about recording every expense, meals on the run are one of the biggest budget busters that exist. Make that meal at home. You don't have time? Get yourself a crock pot. There are ways to cut your budget. There are ways to cut the amount you spend. And when you see how much you spend in certain categories, it ought to be a spur to say to you, you know what? There's got to be a better way to do this. And there is. So anyway, those are 16 overall tips. Some of them will apply to you, some of them will not. And there's many, many more. And you can go on the internet and you can search around there's all sorts of articles every year in all the financial magazines as to how to best save money, how to make your budget work. And these are just some ideas that hopefully has given you some food for thought. So, Tom Simmons signing off from the Personal Financial Literacy Series.